Dragon Ball Z cast a long shadow over shonen anime, and for good reason. The fights were great, the transformations were meaningful, and it was the quintessential battle shonen. And overall, the show had a pretty good draw. So good, in fact, that an entire generation of anime was created with this draw in mind. So you might be thinking,
what the hell is this draw? What's this template that inspired the likes of Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece?
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you, drum roll please, perspective and relation. Now, what do I mean by this? The perspective part being, we're in the shoes of Goku, we're in the shoes of Naruto. We see every aspect of the story's progression through their eyes, and because of this, we develop a connection to the protagonist. Relation. When the protagonist gets beat up, we feel that. When someone close to them dies, we see it, and from their shoes and whatever their response is, in this case it's usually anger, we feel that. This may seem like a simple, well duh, of course we're in the character's shoes, but bear with me here. Any author of their own story can decide what to do with their plot and the characters in it. It doesn't have to follow this obligatory outline of like, oh, here's the main character, here's their friends, here's the bad guy. Now imagine, just imagine, if instead of shoving the same perspective down your throat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, you get a new perspective. You get the perspective of everyone, even the villain. This is where Chimera Ant Arc comes in. It's my personal belief that this arc is easily, hands down, the best shonen arc of all time. Yeah, sure, you got the Pain arc, Namek, Dark Tournament. These are all great, and I'd say that they're pretty good anime arcs. But Chimera Ant is a great arc in general. I felt like it could have been in a book, a movie, a TV show, anything, you name it. It's just a great story in general. Now, we gotta talk about this pacing thing, because every time people talk about the Chimera Ant arc, particularly anime fans, they say things like, oh, it's bad, it drags, it's too long. First of all, pacing. Pacing doesn't mean anything by itself. You can't just say the story has bad pacing because you have to add greater context behind the word pacing. You see where I'm going with this? The word bad doesn't give context. What makes the pacing bad? You'd be better off saying slow or long pacing, because at least then you'd give more context. Even then, you'd be wrong. Have you ever watched TV shows like The Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones? These are called long burn TV shows. They're meant to be slow, prolonged experiences that give perspectives to each character. And in turn, by the end of the show, you get payoffs that are worth it. These people are comparing the pacing of a fucking TikTok reel to a 600-page novel. It ain't gonna work, buddy. This goes back to my perspective thing. Usually in anime, you get villains, and typically what the show likes to do is say, hey, we want you to empathize with this character more. So he's gonna monologue about his goal, and we'll give you his flashback too. Now, the flashback thing isn't bad. I think it does a great job of establishing the character in the world that they live in, and they can also give you perspective. But it isn't the most effective way to do that. Y'all wanna know what the most effective way is? I'll give you time to come up with the answer first. Ding, ding, ding! Letting us spend time with the villain. I'm not talking about one full episode or 10 minutes. I'm talking about the whole fucking story. 60% of Chimera Ant, I'd argue more, is spending time with the ants. We get to see Meryl's perspective on life, humans, and the things he does on a day-to-day basis. By doing that, you may come out on the other side not biased toward anyone. That's effective storytelling. It fucks with the viewer's emotions. The world doesn't revolve around Gon. Gon is just a character who lives in the world. You love Gon, but you also love Meryl. These two bump heads, and you don't know who to pick. That's not all though. I'm sure everyone's heard of parallels in the story. Naruto's got a bunch of them. Too many, I'd argue. Sasuke, Pain, Obito, Gaara, the list goes on. In Dragon Ball, you got Vegeta, Cell, blah blah blah. In Chimera, Gon's parallel is Meryl. You might not even notice it the first time because 1, it's not conventional, and 2, because Togashi's a genius. Not only was the parallel subtle, but it was completely flipped on its head. Gon is the aggressor in this arc. The same happy-go-lucky boy is the same one holding an innocent girl hostage and threatens to kill her if Pito doesn't fight him. He's relentless, he's selfish, he doesn't give a Meryl, on the other hand, becomes more kind as the arc progresses, but not just kind to others, you see, he's more kind to himself. He sees his purpose and his value in his existence. He wants to be a leader and stop the bloodshed and fighting. Netero, on the other hand, is trying to put this man in the f***ing dirt. And bro just sits down and he says, hey, let's have an open discussion. Again, parallels, perspective. By altering this ever so slightly, you can completely change the dynamic of your story and make it engaging. Gon and Meruem aren't the only parallels though. We also got Killua and Pito. Pito's distraught because of the king's drastic change in empathy toward humans, and Killua is witnessing Gon's descent into darkness in 4K. Both characters can't do anything to save the ones that they care about, one ascending into heroism and the other one descending into villainy. This is a complete deconstruction of shonen tropes which has been used for decades now. Flashbacks to give exposition to character goals, heroes with unwavering will, the mustache-twirling villain, all the formalities you came to understand. The funny part is, that's not even the only subversion this arc has. There's more. I'm not kidding. Let's move on to... Narration could be hit or miss with stories. It could be annoying, it could be obnoxious. Trust me, I've heard all the horror stories about Chimera Ant's narration, and I'm here to say that they're all false. The narration in this arc brings so much impact, so much power, and it engages you. When Netero shows up, there's a flashback, but not just any flashback. It's a flashback that evokes an emotion I don't think I've ever felt in a story. The narrator tells you that this man wakes up and decides he's grateful. So what does he do to show his gratitude? He performs 10,000 punches a day for 2 years. I'm not kidding. No sleep, no eat, no piss, no shit. He stands there and punches the air, which takes him 5 to 6 seconds to do, and repeats this remedial action for 2 years straight. This is the craziest action sequence I've ever seen. When the flashback's over, this motherfucker's just floating in midair over the palace. And when he speaks, his words come out in like 2 seconds. It's insane. The narration here really nails the immersion, and the execution coupled with the presentation makes it more enjoyable. You really get the feeling that both sides aren't fucking around. At the core of Chimera Ant, it's about two factions waging war. It's about the philosophical battle within and how their experiences can change everything. Let me break it down for the dummies, cause this probably went over a lot of y'all's heads. Ants being literally and figuratively the most insignificant thing on this planet versus humans, the most intelligent, technologically advanced race on Earth, duking it out. Who will win? This shit gets so intense to the point where each faction gets desperate for survival and have mental breakdowns on screen. There's characters that literally feel the presence of the ants and their hair immediately goes gray and they grow old because of the stress. There's traitor ants that join the human side out of fear of the conflict at hand. In between all of this, the narration provides the connecting tissue to bolster the power of these events. Without it, I feel like I'm robbed of catharsis. It feels like I'm sitting on the edge of my seat reading an intense book called Humans vs. Ants. Wait, isn't that what I'm doing? We all love transformations in anime, whether it be the Super Saiyan, Gear 5, 6 Paths, they're all great, and they all have two integral aspects to them that make them great: build-up and execution. You gotta have proper build-up with these scenes, conflicts that coincide with the emotional and or physical development of the character. The build-up serves as a rising action, providing you with the exposition and context to the character's failures and goals. By the time you get to the execution, in this case the climax, the payoff is instant. It's satisfying as a whole because you sat there and watched through the entire journey. By the time you get to the end, it's like, holy fuck. But again, the feelings can vary. Not often, but they can. Now, I don't know how Togashi did it, but this man is a genius. In Chimera, the build-up is subtle, and it's not at the same time. Because again, Gon's not the primary focus of this arc, he's just a character in it. Gon is clearly going through an emotional roller coaster throughout this arc. One second he's happy, the next second he's crying, then he goes from crying to anger, then he's just having a mental breakdown on screen. This little boy is going through it. Pito is not giving him what he wants, and he's willing to sacrifice anything for it. He goes through the 5 stages of grief, but instead of the final stage, accepting, scratch that off and just put, I don't care, which is a form of accepting, I suppose. I guess you could say Gon accepted his death, because after this he gives up all his potential, all his nen, his future, to achieve something horrifying. He wanted to finally free himself of the grief, but he had to give up his life for it. The build-up was there. For 50+ episodes, the execution was amazing and it felt real. He lost the life in his eyes, and his anger was depicted through silence. It's freaking scary. Let me fill you in on something. A little bit of theming here. He lost his humanity. He, himself, Gon, became the very thing he swore to destroy.
You and the chosen one!
This scene really hammers this contradiction home, because this transformation doesn't feel triumphant. I'm not rooting for Gon, I'm worried about him. Killua shows up and all he can see is his teary-eyed friend beating the face of Pito, his only friend who helped him escape the darkness, descending into darkness himself. Build-up, execution, theming. All of these aspects embody the entire Chimera Ant arc, not just this transformation. Listen, I know I just gushed and pretty much told you everything about it for almost 10 minutes, but please, for the love of God, watch it. It doesn't do you any justice hearing someone else talk about it. You have to experience it to truly understand why it's so good. Everybody owes it to themselves to experience how much of a masterpiece this actually is. Anyway, I'm out. I hope y'all enjoyed and subscribe for more content. Peace.